There is a palpable grief sweeping our country. It's touching us all. For those who have lost loved ones, whether to the virus or in any other way in these last months, the pain is sharpest. All of the communal Jewish rituals that are meant to carry us through loss, holding a funeral surrounded by family and friends, reciting the Kaddish with community members, sitting Shiva at home, and receiving food and hugs, have been taken away or altered significantly. I've been blown away by the creative and genuine outpourings of love and support for those in our community experiencing illness or loss. Zoom Shiva Minyanim, in which we share stories, drive-by Shivas, when we wave and speak at a distance, phone calls, texts, and food deliveries. And yet, mourning in today's world is missing what is most essential and restorative: the physical presence of loved ones and the familiar rituals we have relied on since ancient times. Mary Hagan Roberts, a mother and retired speech-language pathologist, wrote a heartbreaking article in the Huffington Post this week about the loneliness of mourning her 33-year-old daughter, Laura, who died last month. She writes, "I was not with her, and I have no idea how to carry on now that she is gone, or what to do with my unbelievable and unbearable sorrow. Tell me how to grieve when we are not permitted to have a funeral or memorial service, when the precious body of my child disappears into the back of a repurposed funeral home minivan, never to be seen again. I want the rituals of mourning that our society, that I have learned to rely on to process grief. I ache to hold my grandsons. I want to hug my sister and see my brothers who live 1,000 miles away. I miss my friends. I want to go to Laura's favorite brew pub and order greasy sliders and a pitcher of IPA and share and cry with her coworkers and friends. I want to accept the mystery casseroles and chocolate brownies that my neighbors, when called upon, will rally and bring me, along with their sympathy and love. For now, instead of a service, instead of a funeral, I wake up every morning and go to bed every night with this hole in my heart, and I don't know how I'll move forward." Rituals help us move forward. They carry us from one state to the next and help us process our emotions in the supportive context of community. We're all experiencing other sorts of secondary grief that are important to acknowledge: the loss of routine, social connections, family and school structure, and our sense of security. We're canceling or postponing trips, simchas, summer camp. Some have lost a job or business. And while these losses are not maybe as profound as losing a loved one, we still feel disappointment, sadness, anger, or even despair. And it's important that we acknowledge these emotions in ourselves. Grief experts tell us that left unrecognized or unattended, grief can negatively impact every aspect of our being, physically, cognitively, emotionally, and spiritually. We see in the Torah a striking parallel to our own altered form of enduring grief. In the book of Leviticus, the Kohanim cannot care for their dead or be comforted by the community in the ways that other Israelites can. Parashat Emor opens with God's instruction to the high priest Aaron and his sons about how they should behave when a relative dies. Priests were to maintain their ritual purity as much as possible in order to perform their service in the temple. Sacrifices could not be offered in an impure state, and since contact with the dead body conferred impurity, the Kohanim are told in this week's Parsha that they may only participate in the burial of their closest relatives: their parents, their children, their brother, an unmarried sister, and according to later commentators, their wives. The Midrash makes this prohibition even more severe, commenting that the Kohen should only bury a relative if there is no one else who can fulfill the mitzvah. In this way, the Kohanim limit their potential for contracting ritual impurity from a corpse. The priests are also prohibited from engaging in mourning rituals that were practiced at the time. They're not to shave their heads, cut the sides of their beards, or make gashes in their flesh. Their role as holy servants of God takes precedence over their private mourning and even their obligations to family. As the Torah says, Kedoshim yihiyu leElohehem, v'lo yechalalu shem Elohehem. They shall be holy to their God and not profane the name of God, for they offer the Lord's offerings by fire, the food of their God, and so must be holy. The sages added further restrictions on the high priest. Rabbi Meir in Mishnah Sanhedrin teaches that even if any of his nearest kin die, where it says, he may not follow after the bier on its way to its burial. His proof text is a verse from our Parsha where it says, the high priest shall not go in where there is any dead body. He shall not defile himself even for his father or his mother. Only when those carrying the body are not visible, according to Rabbi Meir, perhaps in an alleyway, may the high priest come out to see the bier, and he may only go as far as the city gate. The high priest cannot accompany his beloved dead to their final resting place, and he cannot be seen by others mourning his dead. Another sage, Rabbi Judah, is even more restrictive, teaching that the high priest may not even leave the temple when a close relative dies. When people pass by the high priest to offer him words of nechama, comfort, Rabbi Judah says that an appointed priest should stand between the high priest and the people so he does not get too close to them. And when they feed him the customary meal for mourners after the funeral, all the people around him must sit on the ground while he sits on the stool. The high priest, like a typical mourner, is fed by community, but he never stops representing God and the holy temple, and to lower himself would show them disrespect. But this also means that he cannot come close to those who wish to comfort him. Rabbi Yehuda teaches in the Talmud in Horayot that the high priest is not allowed to perform kriya, the ritual tearing of one's garment upon hearing the news of a loved one's death. Tearing one's garment, or the ribbon many tear instead today, reflects the physical manifestation of the mourner's broken heart. It is a public, physical outpouring of grief. Rabbi Shimon, however, says that while the high priest does not rip his outer garment, he may rip his inner garment underneath his clothing. The high priest thus keeps his mourning private and must control his emotions because of his unique role in Israelite society. Today, even in the absence of the temple, many Kohanim refrain from going to cemeteries to maintain their ritual purity. In the book of Exodus, the Torah commands the Jewish people to be a mamlechet Kohanim, a nation of priests. This is normally understood by our sages to call us to a higher level of moral and ethical behavior. But these days, all of us may be experiencing a different dimension of what it means to be a mamlechet Kohanim. Like the priests of ancient Israel who had to subordinate their private needs in order to serve the community, we too are putting aside the ways we normally grieve for the sake of society's well-being and for public health. It is a devastating and painful but necessary act of service to others. But while we're denied our public acts of mourning, we cannot avoid our feelings. Like the high priest, even if we cannot tear our outer garments in the presence of others or mourn with our community the way we yearn to, we should still rip our inner garment. We must find ways to express our sadness and mourn the losses we are experiencing. Grief experts recommend several ways for coping in our current reality. First, share with someone how we're feeling and listen to them as well. The listener's role here is not to receive or offer advice for how to fix the problem, but simply to witness what another person is going through. Second, we can find a creative outlet to express our emotions, such as journaling, drawing, or music. Thirdly, we can meditate or pray. And throughout the day, it's important to make sure we take time to breathe deeply to lower our stress level. And finally, even amidst sadness and disappointment, it's important to cultivate moments of joy. We can dance, sing, find safe ways to see friends and family, eat well, hug the ones we're with, and do things we enjoy. Every day we can find opportunities to smile and feel gratitude. On Tuesday, we'll celebrate Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer, and traditionally the end of our mourning period during the Omer. This year, on this special Lag BaOmer, May we recognize the losses we're experiencing, but also search actively for sources of comfort. We're still alive and still in need of love. May we seek the light even in our time of darkness and offer warmth and light to one another. Shabbat Shalom.